Hey everyone, welcome back to Healthy Mind, Healthy Life, the podcast where we dive deep into the habits, mindsets, and the strategies that help us create a thriving life. I'm your host Avik, and today we have an incredible guest who is defying expectations and rewriting the rules of success at just 20 years old. Yeah. So our guest
Avik,
today is, yeah, please, Nick.
sorry, no, thank you for having me. I was so excited I jumped in. I thought that was my cue. I'm excited to sit down and have this conversation with you today.
Lovely, great, no issue. So dear listeners, we have our guest today is Nick Batchelder. So welcome to the show, Nick. And
Thank you.
and so before we proceed, I'll quickly love to introduce you to all of our listeners. Dear listeners, Nick is a college junior, author, entrepreneur, and podcast host. So at an age when most people are still figuring things out, like what to do, how to do, Nick has already written and published a book, Crush Your 20s, founded Hive Mentors to help students develop the professional skills, and hosts his own podcast, Building the Blueprint. So his mission is very clear: to empower young adults with the tools that they need to crush their 20s and beyond. And we are diving into some powerful topics today: entrepreneurship, confidence, and emotional intelligence, the very skills that can make or break a successful life and a career. So, buckle up, dear listeners, because this conversation is about to be a game changer. So, welcome to the show again.
Thank you for having me. I can't wait.
Lovely. So, um, making of a young entrepreneur. That's really lovely. So, it's not that every day I meet a 20-year-old with your level of ambition, but let's start with your journey. What made you decide, I'm not waiting for success, I'm building it now?
Yeah. Well, I there is very early on. So, in high school, I was like every other high school student. I was pretty shy at first and, school was fine, life was fine, but I quickly realized there was a lot more out of life that I felt like there was still to live. And I just wasn't happy with where I was. I was really shy. I didn't push myself, and I was really just terrified of the world in so many ways. And then, of course, COVID-19 happened, and I was stuck inside. And so I was a lot of time and a lot of self-reflection of like, is this who I want to be? Like, is this where, I want my whole life to be like? And it was over that time and a lot of self-reflection that I realized, no, it's not. I want to strive for more. I want to give it all I have. And really, that's been my goal and my philosophy ever since is just leave it all out on the table. And that's why I do so much. That's why I started the business and wrote the book and have the podcast is I really just enjoy doing. I really enjoy pushing myself to new limits and doing things that are scary. And that's what fulfills me. And that's really what began it all was a lot of self-reflection.
That's really awesome, I have to say. Yeah. And also, like, um, you talk about the comfortable upbringing, fear of pushing the limits, and how challenge that mindset through the mentorship, self improvement, and taking risks. So, um, that's really powerful, and a lot of people wait until they are older to develop that kind of mindset. So, do you think that age is just an excuse people use to delay chasing their goals?
Yeah, definitely. And there is some truth
Hmm.
to it, right? The older you
Yeah.
are, and depending on your life situation, certain things are easier to go after. But there's absolutely a mindset, especially with young people and especially in college, that, oh, that's something I'll deal with once I'm older, right? Like, oh, money, that's something I'll deal with once I'm older. I'll figure out what credit is and how to like have a bank account. Or, getting in shape, that's something I'll deal with, in the winter. I mean, in the spring, right? When it's summertime and like I want to get in good shape. And so time, is always really an excuse an excuse, whether you're 20 or whether you're 40 or whether you're 60, right? So a lot of it is learning, to be present and learning, right? Things aren't going to change, right? Whether I'm 20 or 40 or 60, I might as well start now. And, I think young adults have the advantage because we have so much time, right? We have so much more time than people who are 40 with two kids. And we have this opportunity to really work on ourselves, and that's really what I try and push my peers to do is now is your moment. right? Don't wait till you have all these responsibilities in life. Use this time to better yourself and to really live your life.
That's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. So, like, what advice would you give to someone who feels like too young or too inexperienced to start something?
Yeah. You know,
Mm.
what my favorite thing that I see from so many mentors of mine who are killing it in the world
Okay.
is the phrase, no
Mm.
one knows what they're doing, but the people who are
Yeah.
successful try anyways. And so what I always tell people is,
Mm.
people are not as smart, not as, confident, not as, more
Mm.
qualified than you think, right? Like everyone's just a human being. Everyone's just trying to figure out as they go along. And so, my
Mm.
biggest advice to them is always the hardest part is starting. The first step is always the scariest. The first step is always the biggest. The first step is always the longest
Mm.
from where you are, right? That's the longest you'll ever be from your goal. And so really just taking that first step and just trying it. And if you take that first step and you're like, I can't do it or it's not for me, that's okay. But don't live your life going, okay, well, like what if? What if I had started that, podcast? What if I had started that business? What if I had talked to that person at the cafe? And so I really tell them just take the first step and, don't worry about anything else because, that's the hardest part and anybody can do it.
Exactly. And okay, and one more thing is like confidence. It plays a massive role in entrepreneurship and the personal growth. And you have gone being I mean from being afraid of pushing limits to writing a book and also leading a business. So how did you build that confidence?
Absolutely. Every day with small, small little things. A lot of people think confidence is something that you don't have one day and then you have it one, and then all of a sudden you have it, right? Confidence isn't
Yeah.
something that you magically have and then for the rest of your life, that's something you're going to have, right? Like that's a tool belt. Like, no, it's confidence is a choice every day and confidence is a battle every day, right? Some days I'm more confident, some days I'm really nervous, and some days, like I'm not going to leave the house, like I can't. And then some days I'm like, I'm the man, like I've got this. And so for me, I use, a lot of different tools to help me be confident, right? It's not one
Mhm.
innate personal quality that I have. So, for example, a lot of it is just how I talk to myself, right? I do a great job of talking to myself of I can do this, right? Like I am smart enough. And a lot of self-affirmations are like, okay, I know I
Yeah.
can do this. I also do a lot of work of, what I like to call I'm due for
Mhm.
one. And this isn't originally my technique. It's from Dr. Wiseman in his book. And it's all about, for example, if you're playing basketball and you miss,
Mm.
8 shots in a row, like what you
Yeah.
call cold when you're playing basketball. It's the idea of, not talking to yourself like I missed 8 shots in a row. Like, that means I'm cold. That means I'm never going to make one today. It's no,
Mm.
I missed 8 shots in a row. That means I'm due for one, right? Like I'm destined to make this next one because there's no way that
Yeah.
I'd miss 9 in a row, right? That's never going to happen. And so a lot of it is, okay, well, how are you talking to yourself? What mindsets do you have? Some of it's just faking it till you make it, right? So, for example, when I'm coming on this podcast, I'm thinking to myself, oh, I'm the best podcast guest in the world, right? Obviously, I'm not the best podcast guest in the world, but that helps me be a little more confident when I'm talking to you, right? Opposed to coming in here and being like, I don't think I can do this. Like, this is terrifying, right? So, really understanding, okay, one, how are you talking to yourself? And then also two, understanding like confidence is a daily battle. Some days you're going to feel a 9 out of 10. Some days you're going to feel 3 out of 10. And it's just knowing that, that's natural and that you just have to give it your all every day.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And okay. And like confidence isn't something that you wake up with. It's something you build with, like example, muscle. But here's the challenge is like, how do you stay confident in the moments of failure or kind of self-doubt?
Yeah, it's a great
Mhm.
question. And,
Mhm.
for me, it's two things in terms of staying confident in the moment. And, the first thing is the more you do scary things, the more you realize it's going to be okay. right? So for example, I've failed so many times, countless times. And then I know the next time that I'm in a scary situation that if I fail, life's going to be okay. I'm not going to die, right? Like life still moves on. I'm not going to get kicked out of Oregon if this is a bad interview, right? If I do bad. And so that helps me going, okay, I've done this before, I've failed before, and I've survived it, right? So a lot
Yeah.
of it for me is, just getting reps and knowing, okay, no matter what happens, I'll be okay. And then that gives me confidence in the moment of no matter what happens here, I'll be all right. And then the second thing for me is just who I surround myself with, right? It's really important for me that I'm surrounding myself with people who have the qualities that I want. And if you're surrounding yourself with people who are always confident, if you're surrounding yourself with people who take risks, you're going to see that, and then you're going to start to develop more of that in yourself. And so um, that constant, ability to one, surround yourself with people who are pushing themselves, and then two, put yourself in more situations where you're okay with failure and that you do fail, so that you can slowly do scarier and scarier things, and you're going to know, all right, no matter what happens here, I'm going to live. I'm going to be all right.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. Yeah. And also at the same time, it's like, what's a moment where you failed or maybe faced serious doubt? Anything you want to share?
Yeah. So for my business, what I do is I do professional workshops. That's a big part of it. So I work with a lot of the Greek life here on campus,
Mm.
and I share with them, okay, well, how do you be a better networker, right? How do you write a standout resume?
Mm.
And starting that business was really, really scary because it was basically the premise of the business and the foundation was a lot of public speaking from me. And not only a lot of public
Mm.
speaking, but a lot of marketing to get people to show up to these events, right? College students don't love professional development. It's one of those things we talked about earlier of they push that down the line of, I'll get to that when it comes. And so I had
Mm.
to work really hard to get people to show up. And on top of that, I was terrified because now I had to speak to all these people. And I remember, when I first started, I would have to present to, 6 people, even though I was trying to get 40 people to show up. And I was like so upset that only 6 people were in the audience. Or the first time that I got, 20 to 30 people there, I was so scared that like I was stumbling over my words. I didn't really know what I was saying. And then you go home after that and it hurts, right? And especially in the moment, like you're terrified of, I've put in all this work. There's so many people watching me, or only 7 people showed up. I really was hoping for 40. And, for me, it always hurts in the moment. I'm not gonna lie. It's a character builder, but
Mm.
I always feel so much better and so motivated after, right? It's kind of like taking a cold plunge of,
Yeah.
no one enjoys the cold plunge when you're actually in the ice water, but you enjoy it when you get out, right? That's when you feel the effects of it. And
Mm.
so, for me, it gets scary. Like even, for example, I've done plenty of cold plunges in my life.
Mhm.
And every time someone asks me, do you want to do a cold plunge? Of course I don't want to do a cold plunge. Like I know it's coming. Like I know I'm not going to enjoy it. But I also know that I'm going to be happy if I do it. And so for me, kind of going back to that taking the first step moment of for me, it's always like I put all my energy into just taking the first step and saying yes and throwing myself in there. And then once I'm in there, I'm all right. I get through it and then I'm happy that I did it. So it's really just getting over that first step. And, I fail all the time. I fail with public speaking. I fail with marketing, and, I fail my midterm occasionally. And so, it's just being confident and courageous enough to take the first step, even if failure is a likely outcome.
Mhm. Got it. Yeah. So you have read like 40 plus self-help books, tested countless strategies, and distilled your insights into crush your 20s. So what's one lesson from the book that you wish every young adult would apply immediately?
Hmm. I would say the one
Hmm.
thing is connection, especially for young adults.
Okay.
We live in a world where I really think so many young adults are disconnected from each other,
Mm.
and
True.
particularly young men. And what I mean by that is, you know, interacting with the world is scary. And, 20,
Mm.
30 years ago, you had to interact with the world because technology wasn't where it was, right? You had to go talk to people at the cafe. You had to have in-person study
Mm.
groups. You had to do your job interviews in person, right? And
Right.
that's scary. And a lot of human interaction is scary. And what's ended up happening nowadays is because of
Mm.
technology, it's really easy to avoid that. And you become really underdeveloped in your emotional intelligence and also and just your connection with the world. And so I know so many people that go to class, come back, stay in their rooms all day, and then that's it,
Mm.
right? And so it is so important to push yourself in terms of getting out and being in the community. There's some really cool studies that show, what is the most important that studied, what's the most important muscle when you get old, right? Like out of all the muscles, what's most important?
Mm.
And the answer was hamstrings. And the reason it was hamstrings was if you have healthy hamstrings, you're able to walk around better. And if you can walk around better, you can interact with people more, right? And that was the clue there was interacting with others is the key, right? Like we are
Mm.
group creatures. We are here to be social. And even though, it's scary at times, we really do feel better
Mm.
and we do operate well in life when we're around others. And so the biggest, advice and takeaway that I would offer to young adults is find ways to interact with your community, right? Sometimes if you're in college, join a club or a fraternity or sorority. If you're just outside of
Yeah,
college, join a run club, right? Or, start going out with the people that you work with, maybe go to dinner or to a bar after work every Saturday and just find ways to connect with each other and to connect with the people around you. And I think you'll find that you're so much happier as a result.
exactly. And also, like, people overcomplicate success, but sometimes it's about just starting, making small improvements, and staying consistent. So, what do you say on this?
Yeah, I think, another part of success too is working hard. And,
Yeah.
success doesn't have to look hard, is one of the things my dad
Mm.
has always taught me, which is, if you're smart about it and you're smart with your work, it really doesn't need to be, oh, I'm working from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., right? So a lot of it
9 p.m.
is, okay, being very intentional and very smart with what do I
Mhm.
want? What does success look like to me? And, what systems do I have in place to get there? And, to kind of build off of that, I like the analogy of if I'm going to go 1 mile, I'm going to walk and it's going to take me 10 minutes. And if I'm going to go 3 miles, I'm going to drive and it's going to take me 5 minutes, right? So often you can actually get farther in less time if you have the right kind of mindset. And so for me, kind of coming back to your question about, is, success looking hard and everything. For me, it's all about, defining what success means to you and then being really intentional about, okay, how am I crafting my life to best fit that? So if success to me is going to the gym every day, then that's how I craft my life. And that's what I put in my calendar. And that's really what I focus on. And if success to me is running a great business, then that's what I focus on. So being really intentional about like, what is success to you? Don't have a broad definition of like, oh, like I think it's that, I think it's this. Like have a very clear vision, and then success becomes a lot easier and a lot clearer. And you really have something to strive towards. And you're not spending all your days trying to do a million different things and working really, really hard on all these different things and then feeling unsatisfied, right? So it's really, you have to have a clear intention of what you're going after.
Mhm. Exactly. Lovely. And like, I mean, now that so let me throw a little curveball at you.
Yeah.
So kind of hustle culture is huge right now globally, I guess. Yeah. And people glorify 16 hours work days, but others say it leads to the burnout. Where do you stand?
I stand somewhere in the middle. So
Yeah.
I'm I'm a very disciplined person. I work really hard, but it's also important to me that I have both a professional life and a social
Mm.
life because, I don't want to be, on my deathbed going, oh man, I didn't do anything in my 20s, right? So you
Mm.
mentioned earlier, like, yes, I do a lot, especially for a 20-year-old, but I also,
Yeah.
work really hard to do fun things. And for me, what I end up cutting out is, the social media or the,
Mm.
taking a 3-hour nap. So for me, it's really important of like, I have these goals and I do want to hustle and hustling is really important. And like, I think everybody should be hustling at least a little bit. And, so for some people, hustling is 30 minutes extra of work a day. And so for some people, that's, 8 hours of extra work a day. I'm somewhere in the middle. But I think it's really, really important to set a time to take care of yourself, whether taking care of yourself means going to the gym, whether taking care of yourself means being social and going out at night, whether taking care of yourself means taking extra time to make better meals. So I think a balance is so important. And I do think you should hustle and apply yourself and be ambitious. but don't forget to at least leave a little time for yourself and taking care of you.
That's awesome. I really love that, your perspective, really. And also, like, uh, especially for the young entrepreneurs who feel like they have to grind all the time to prove themselves. That's very, very important message, I would say. And also, like, I mean, I have to say this is really an incredible conversation. And before we wrap, like, where can people find your book, follow your journey, and connect with you?
Yeah, so a few places. First off, you can find
Uh-huh.
my book, Crush Your 20s, on Amazon. You can
Okay.
also follow me and all the social media stuff that I do on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube at just at Nick Batchelder. And I post a lot of
Uh,
content regarding my podcast and also regarding quick tips on, anything from social life to professional life. And you can find me at Building the Blueprint podcast.
That's amazing, really. So, to everyone who is listening, whether you are 20s, 30s, or beyond, the principles we talked about today apply to anyone who wants to level up in life. And confidence, emotional intelligence, and taking action, these are the things that make the difference. So, if you have found value in today's conversation, share this episode with a friend, family, or someone who actually needs to listen to this, and leave us a review. And let's keep growing together. And always remember that success isn't about the age, it's about the mindset. So, go out and crush it. See you there on other episodes and in the next episode, basically, of Healthy Mind and Healthy Life. Till then, thank you so much.